From one consent decree to another, can new p0lice commissioner repeat New Orleans' success in Baltim? Baltimore. It was a troubled department. A U.S. justice. In many ways, the New Orleans Police Department mirrored Baltimore's force. But under the leadership of Superintendent Michael Harrison, he said, "We've." Harrison, who left the New Orleans Department in January to become Baltimore's next police commissioner, is again taking the challenge of leading a troubled department through expansive court-ordered reforms, while also dealing with a community largely distrustful of police. New Orleans was this. He continued, Harrison said he built the New Orleans Police Department into one that embraces its consent decree, in part by bringing in that experience made him a top candidate for the Baltimore job. The two consent decrees are not theirs. The Baltimore City Council gave final confirmation to Harrison in a unanimous vote at a meeting Monday. Harrison is Ronald Serpis, the New Orleans police superintendent before Harrison and now a criminal justice professor at Loyola University New Orleans, said he has studied many cities that have come under federal consent decrees and has found many commonalities among them. In Baltimore, Justice Department officials in 2016 found that officers routinely made unconstitutional stops, searches, and arrests disproportionately affecting African Americans, and used excessive force, which resulted in deep community mistrust of the agency. The City and Justice Department entered into a consent decree in April 2017. Over the first year, the police department has met a considerable number of requirements, the judge and officials from the City, Justice Department and monitoring team have said. She said the consent decrees in New Orleans and Baltimore focus on reforms related to training, officer misconduct, technology, community engagement and officer assistance and support. Both consent decrees, for example, mandated changes to the way the departments handled misconduct investigations. In Baltimore, officials agree that misconduct evaluations are important to ensure the department can investigate its own and deter wrongdoing by officers. In New Orleans, the department has been using the Ethical Policing is Courageous EPIC program, which trains and empowers officers to intervene in potential misconduct before it happens. Wurzburger said New Orleans made other changes to how it handles such investigations, including revising how misconduct complaints are received, investigated, and adjudicated, which has increased the public. The number of complaints made by the public against officers decreased from 669 in 2013 to 470 in 2017, the latest report from the New Orleans monitoring team said. The New Orleans department has also seen other improvements, which local officials hope will be the case in Baltimore. In New Orleans, the department has implemented new policies and protocols, which the monitoring team said had resulted in fewer use of force incidents, from 9 in 2013 to 0 last year. Of 120 in Baltimore, much of the work to date has focused on rewriting police department policies and is now shifting to training officers. The number of hours In addition to increased training, Baltimore and New Orleans, like other cities, are also required to spend more on technology. Baltimore is expected to spend up to $65 million on technology upgrades in the department. That cost is on. Many consent decrees also require departments to better engage the community, to discuss the consent decree, but also build long-term partnerships. The consent decree, a 2017 survey by the monitoring team in New Orleans, found that improvements in its latest survey show Wurzburger said her team was also working to make improvements in the upcoming year to engage more residents, a trend that she said would help educate them about the consent decree but also bridge relationships. Ultimately, engaging. Under Harrison's tenure in New Orleans, overall violent crime rose, but homicides have declined. Harrison has said that he believes he can replicate New Orleans' success in Baltimore. The Baltimore Sun's Kevin Rector contributed to this report. Visit the Baltimore Sun it.
Raindrop, drop top smoking, no cooking the hot pot. Fucking on your bitch, yeah, that. Looking up, open the park pot.